I want to talk in this video about I guess it feels like a transition from aloneness to all oneness, or from alone to all one, to oneness, unity. Perfect time to talk about transition. It's fall here. Can't see too many colors yet behind me, but there's the spring branch. I'll just kind of scooch to the side. The spring branch is full of a lot of leaves right now. And I really love this time of year because just in nature, I can really feel everything slowing down. Everything's moving a little slower. The trees are starting to drop their leaves. The water in the spring branch gets really low this time of year, so the water feels like it moves a little slower. So I've found that there's been a transition that feels like it's happening in my own experience. And I like sharing stuff that feels a bit more human, that humanizes me, that doesn't portray me as somebody who's elevated or has arrived somewhere. Just in the way that life has, kind of unfolded for me, there was a very extended period of time of being alone on my property and being away from people, and, naturally just things got pulled away. And there was really an emptying and a solitude, and that space was so necessary for the truth of emptiness, or you might call it awareness or presence, to really flower and to be able to see it. Everything else had to get pulled away. And, that was very, very painful. It was very confronting. And then that seeing happened, that there's actually nobody here. There's no, what you might hear in a lot of like non-duality videos, that there's no doer, there's no controller of your life, there's no person. So there's a seeing that what you are in essence is empty, silent presence. And there's an experiencing of that. There's actually a living of that. And for me, part of that aloneness, that solitude, the aloneness was so deep. It wasn't just being removed from the world, although that was a big part of it, but the aloneness was so important to really ground in that, and to really know myself really deeply as that, before life could kind of then thrust me back out into the world and around people more. So everything really got stripped away. There was nothing in front of me, no reason to be around people, no standard job, no relationship. The distractions really got ripped away. None of the coping mechanisms really worked anymore, so it was kind of a forced living meditation, a forced stillness, a forced sitting still, so that I could see and know myself as that empty, silent presence. And that could really ground itself and establish itself as a totally new way of being. And then life started kind of thrusting me back out into the world around people again and bringing people into my life. And having a new partner that came into my life, that now I'm not living on this property alone anymore. And so there's just like a totally new learning of how to really be nobody in the presence of others. But it's not just that, it's that aloneness is expanding, and there's a deeper, actually a very surprising, much deeper sense and feel of aloneness that's really grounding itself. That just that, the way that it has worked out is that there's something here that there's just such a deep truth that there needs to be space in my life from anybody that I've known that has this understanding. And I still do one-on-one sessions with people and work with people, and that's so lovely, and I really enjoy doing it. But on the day-to-day, there's nothing present in my world to reflect this understanding. There's nothing to reflect it. So there's a really deep heartbreak happening of this like something that's still kind of gripping, that wants so desperately to have the understanding, the lived experience of truth reflected in another. And that's not possible. That doesn't exist in life for me right now. And so there's that, what it feels like is that, when that opening really happened, and there was a solitude and an aloneness, a physical aloneness, like a aloneness from others, and a leaving of the world and of humanity. There was a seeing and a knowing on a mind level that there are no others. There is no person. The knowing that there is no person really grounded, but a lot of the other things were just, the belief evaporated, the belief in other, the belief in separation, the belief in division, the belief in the ability to believe thought, like all of that evaporated. And since then there's been a slow living it, where life puts circumstances in front of me to test, almost, to say, okay, well, what about here? Can you know this? Can you live this? Can you embody this over here? Well, what about over here? Well, what about in relationship? Well, what about in friendship? Well, what about with your family? All of these tests, if you will, or challenges, or just opportunities to stand as and in that empty, silent presence, and to abide in it in every moment of life. And so there's that, it feels more physical, that physical way of orienting. There's like a way of being in the world that is, okay, there's a someone over here and there's a someone over there, but when that center here dropped, there's no longer a place to orient. So when the feeling, when the sense of being a someone over here evaporated, there's like this this system like grasping for a place to orient, and it can't find it. And so that happened initially alone, totally alone, in solitude. And that needed to happen so that it could ground and like root and establish itself. And now there's people coming into life. Their life is, pushing me into the world, doing more work with people, both online and in person, being around friends more frequently, building community. There's all of these new experiences that are really testing. It's a testing ground for this completely different way of being. Completely different, where there's no ability to orient. But what I feel in the system is that there's still something trying to orient, but it can't find a landing place. So there's a deep restlessness because it can't find a place to land. It can't land here. And when it can't land here, it can't land over there either. When it can't land on a me, it can't land on an other either. But it's so deeply ingrained that it's really trying. It's really trying. Just like, so I've described this in other videos, that when that kind of empty center first opened up, there was a checking in that kept happening, inside. The mind kept trying to check in over and over and over. Your awareness kept trying to check in here to orient to a self, and it couldn't find it. There was nothing for it to land on. But it did it over and over and over until it finally grounded itself in that like, oh, there's nothing here. But that habit to check in was so deeply ingrained that it kept trying until it finally released fully. And so that's what I feel now happening, but kind of with the external world, and specifically with people, with other. So first it happened with self, that there was trying to check in, but it just kept it couldn't find a landing place because that self-center had dropped. And now I find that awareness is trying to check in externally with other people, trying to check in or trying to orient, but it's not able to find a landing place. And it's so intelligent, it's very uncomfortable. So there's a restlessness in that, and it's deeply uncomfortable, but there's such a deep intelligence in that I feel too, where, there's this wisdom in me that knows that there needs to be a pulling away from, any people or relationships that I've had in my life where this understanding can be reflected back to me. So that has been stripped away. So there's no longer relationships in my life that I sustain where this reflecting of knowing oneself as emptiness, or this knowing oneself as emptiness, can be reflected externally. So that's been removed. And so, but there's this thing, awareness is still checking in over and over and over, like, will this person reflect it to me? Will this person reflect it to me? Will my partner reflect it to me? Will this friend reflect it to me? But it keeps coming up empty. So it's that same that same movement that happened with the awareness checking in, trying to check in and find a self, but it couldn't find it. And now it's checking in and trying to find an object out there. So it's really what's happening is that the subject-object construct is dissolving on an experiential level. So like the actual experience of being a subject, of being a someone dropped. And so there's a trying to check in to turn something into an object. So first it was, I guess really it's just objects. So the self as an object. It was like, oh, is there an object here? Like a sense of me as an object, as a thing. It couldn't find it. And so it's now looking to try to turn other people into objects, and it can't do it. There's nowhere to land. And so there's a deep restlessness in that. And so that sense of aloneness is really opening into the experience of oneness. And when I say oneness, it's not like the sexy oneness. When I say oneness, it's not like the sexy oneness of we're all one, like we're all from source. Like that's lovely, but it's that there is nothing outside of that empty, silent presence that you are. There's nothing outside of that. There's nothing other than that. I don't exist as something other than that. No other person exists as something other than that. There is actually no separation. So the felt sense of division is dissolving. The ability to orient to any object is dissolving. To create an object is dissolving. And there's such a deep heartbreak in that. There's a really deep heartbreak in that. And there's like a yearning, such a yearning for that truth to be reflected back. But what's happening is that there's an intelligence and a wisdom that's forcing in every part of life, even when faced with with a person, with a relationship, that there's nothing to lean on. So that what's a way I could say this? I'm not sure. Something was coming, then it kind of evaporated, so that's okay. But it's very painful. Because there's been oh, I need to sneeze. Maybe. Excuse me. But there's been a habit created over a lifetime of orienting, having something to orient to. And when all of that gets stripped away, there's nothing to orient to. There's nothing to lean on. There's no truth outside of just this. It's just, there's nothing. There's no people. There's no relationship. So I guess, I remember what I was going to say. It's that the sense of relationship itself is evaporating. The ability to relate is evaporating. And that does not from a practical standpoint. So there's still an appearance of another what you would label as another person. There's still an appearance of relationship, but the feel of it, the sense of it being other than what I am is gone. But there's still something that's reaching for it. There's such a habit in our humanness. It's baked into our humanness to reach out for other. And there still is an ability to do that. Relationships have bloomed and blossomed and deepened in ways that I never could have imagined. But on the level of being, relationship has dissolved completely. There's no relationship. Because there's no self or other to be in relationship. Relationship requires self and other, subject and object. And that subject and object can be me and this rock that I'm sitting on, or me and my dog, me and my partner, me and my sister, me and my child, me and a tree. Whatever it happens to be, me and the food that I'm eating. Like, life is relationship, but when that sense of subject, or me, or I, self, the feel of it, the experience of it drops, then there's no longer a relationship. But at least in my own life, that has, it's kind of been a process of that settling in. And that feels, maybe like contradictory. It feels like, from a way of explaining it, feels like it could contradict some of the other things that I've said around, just sinking into now, and there's just this. And while that's all true, there is a seeming process behind that of like a awareness disidentifying with or pulling away from, or maybe what's the way I could say this, peeling away from the ability to attach or identify with any object, and therefore with the ability to create relationship. So there's this transition from deep aloneness to oneness. And it's not sexy. It's not that like num 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 num, that like very spiritualized oneness, and it's like oozy and gooey and lovey and like we're all one. Num 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 num, so warm, so fuzzy. It's not that at all. It's shocking. It's a shocking type of oneness. Because there's not two things to be one anymore. The sense of there being two things that stem from the same source are gone. They're not gone, they just are seen to have never been there. It was just an appearance, it's a illusion. And it's very shocking and very disorienting. So it's a learning to, it's how to exist without having any orientation. It's that quote from the Bible of this: the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. The Son of Man has no orientation. There's no landing place. There's nothing to lean on. And that's not like in a relative sense that there's no more people in my life, there's no more relationships in my life. It's something much deeper and much more fundamental than that. It's that awareness itself. Awareness itself has no landing place. It cannot land on anything. It can no longer create an object. It can no longer turn anything into an object of awareness. There's no more objects of awareness apart from awareness. It's so hard to put this to words. It's so hard to explain this. It's one of those things that there might be like a ringing of truth in the words that I'm speaking, and your mind might try to grasp at it and understand it, but it can't. It cannot understand this. This is not, it's interesting, just like this terminology of that, like non-duality is like a philosophy or something to learn. It's not. You cannot learn this. Some leaves rustling in a really funny way up in that tree. But you cannot learn this. This is not, non-duality is not, it's not a thing to learn. You don't learn it. It's what remains when any way of orienting is gone. It's what remains. It's the foundation. It's not a thing to learn or to teach. It's not a knowledge to be gained. It's not something that can be intellectualized or comprehended. It's not possible. So yeah, that's been very present lately, is just that, like a new, it's like the aloneness, the feel of aloneness is kind of like deepening, and what it feels like is there's a fire, for lack of a better way to say this, a fire inside, even though there's not a feeling of inside really anymore. But there's this fire, and every time awareness tries to orient or turn a person into an object, or every time it seeks to have this understanding reflected back, and that falls flat or is not able to be met, when that is not able to happen, it's like the fire is like incinerating some major piece of self. And there's this like burning sense, the sense of a burning. So the fire of truth incinerates everything. Incinerates everything. And this is just a new layer of that. A new, something else being incinerated, or it's a facet, a way of being that doesn't align with truth, that doesn't align with truth, that is dissolving, it's being burned in the fire of truth. That's all that I have. I want to show you this. There's this tree by the spring branch that I love. These roots are so beautiful. There's the branch, and then these just incredible roots. It's so amazing. And the trees. Be well, friends.